You're listening to Big World Network.
Kai's Inquisition, The Blight of Shadowfall, Season 2, Episode 5. Written and read by Ton Krakowski. A hush fell over the group as each mulled over the implications of Pia's story and the subsequent discovery of their location. The rushing of the river melded with the scrape of chalk on slate, as Chajek attempted to sketch a map of Maelstrom, which was, admittedly, less than accurate, since most of what he knew came from ballads, stolen glimpses of maps in Captain Rydal's stateroom, and the boasting of drunken sailors. As he worked, Zephyr trilled, squirmed lazily, and poked his beak, followed by the rest of his head, out of Kai's pack with a curious chirp. The faint stripes and blooms of color marking his leathery skin had begun to intensify, and, although only a few days old, he had grown such that he now looked more like a fledgling rather than a chick. When Kai did not immediately respond to his greeting, he wrestled his way free and hopped closer to her as she sat cross-legged in the grass. She reached out a hand and stroked his crest, a frown firmly in place as she stared out toward the river, lost in thought. Unsatisfied with her tepid response, he nipped at her hand irritably. "Ouch!" Kai yipped and stuffed her bleeding finger in her mouth. She glared at the young pterodactyl. "What was that for?" Zephyr purred and nuzzled her leg, appeased now that he had her undivided attention. With a sigh, she picked him up, placed him on her lap, and offered him some of the petite silver fish Reynard had pulled from the river. "And then there's you. What am I to do with you? You are much too immature for me to simply send off on your own, yet I cannot in good conscience keep you with me as I venture into danger. You should know, little one, I am not the maternal type, something I inherited from my own mother." Kai looked up abruptly and peered downriver toward the ocean, where she could now hear a growing clickety-clack, accompanied by a choppy thumping noise. "Do you hear that?" Pia, whose ears were just as keen as Kai's, asked as she scrambled to her feet, collecting her possessions as she rose. "I do now," Jack said evenly, as she stood and turned to face the commotion, settling into a guarded stance with her falchion drawn. The rest of the party followed her lead, taking up defensive positions and readying their own weapons. They had barely enough time to prepare themselves before 3 enormous crabs scuttled into view, stomping through the sand on 8 hairy, sectioned legs, impressive claws held high. As large as a peasant's hut, the creatures' pale bellies blazed to a feisty orange where the legs attached, and faded to a deep blue at the points farthest from the abdomen. The antennae on their wide, flat heads swiveled docilely, the monsters seemingly unaware of the castaways. "Finally! I could use a distraction," Jack muttered before she sprang at them, wildly racing at the crabs with vicious intent, punctuated by a whoop of exhilaration. "No! Don't hurt them!" A wiry old man dressed in a tattered robe that was uncomfortably short sprinted out of the trees and placed himself directly between Jack and the approaching crabs. His grass-green hair was unkempt, falling almost to the hem of his robe in snarled and knotted clumps. He brazenly held out bony hands to ward off the warrior woman. Jack skidded to a halt before the stranger and looked him over, mystified by more than just his behavior. "Step aside, old man. Those things are dangerous." Yes, of course they're dangerous," he snapped. "But if you just follow me, you can withdraw without anyone coming to any harm. Those creatures have as much right to be here as you." He beckoned to the others behind the big woman. "Come now, don't be shy. I won't hurt you. You must hurry now." Jack burst out laughing. Pia and Chajek looked at each other with wide eyes. Reynard shrugged and said, "Those things are pretty big, especially from down here. I say we take our chances with the crazy old coot." The stranger glanced back at the crabs, who were now holding their claws out menacingly and moving toward them at an alarming rate, before addressing the group again. "Withdraw and follow me. I won't offer again." He spun on his heels and took off back the way he had come. Zephyr squawked indignantly as Kai scooped him under an arm and ran after the stranger, trailed by Reynard, Pia, and Chajek, with a listlessly trotting and clearly annoyed Jack bringing up the rear. The old man moved with an agility and speed that belied his advanced years as he led them inland through the jungle. After traveling for about a quarter mile, he slipped around a large boulder and disappeared from view. "Where'd he go?" Jack groused. Reynard took a closer look. "There's a cave behind this stone, superbly camouflaged. Even I might have missed it." Pia hesitated. "I don't think we should—" "What are you waiting for?" the stranger's voice echoed testily from within the crevice. "A gold-embossed written invitation signed in blood?" Kai shouldered past the scholar. "If nothing else, this man can confirm whether we are where we believe ourselves to be, and provide a useful map." Her eyes flicked to the bard. "My apologies, Chajek." She confidently walked around the boulder and vanished from sight into the hidden cavern. Jack and Reynard rolled their eyes at each other and followed Kai. Pia crossed her arms and set her mouth stubbornly, but allowed herself to be led by an equally unhappy bard. Once inside, the travelers were surprised to find the cavern to be relatively dry and well lit by a merry fire beneath a moderate hole in the ceiling 50 paces in. The strange man beckoned to them, indicating that they rest near the flames. Kai placidly settled next to the old man and released Zephyr. The pterodactyl gazed at her accusingly before stiffly making his way over to their host and curling up against his leg. As the others found their place around the fire pit, Kai asked, "Who are you? Why did you want us to follow you?" "To keep you from harming those poor majestic creatures, of course. Why else?" he huffed. Kai looked at him more closely. In the firelight, his eyes shined a deeper shade of emerald than his hair, and the wrinkles carved into his bark-colored skin were more pronounced. He had twigs and leaves haphazardly poking from his hair, and his teeth were rotted and brown with age. "You can call me Kichi," the man said. He grinned and pointed at the shells and seaweed in Kai's braids. "I had a vision from him. Said I should guide you." "Him? Who might that be?" Pia demanded. She silently refused to join them, and instead remained standing at the edge of the fire's light. "Why, Naderu, of course," Kichi answered. "He told me one of his faithful would be visiting, though how you can be a follower of Naderu and still needlessly threaten his creatures is beyond me." He turned a disapproving eye on Kai, who tried unsuccessfully to ignore the rebuke. "But the way this little fellow looks at you," he patted Zephyr amiably, "tells me that he thinks you're his mama, so you can't be all that bad. Unless you stole his egg, of course." The old man cackled as if that were the funniest thing he had ever heard. Kai glanced uncomfortably at Reynard, who casually picked some dirt from his trousers. Turning back to Kichi, she asked in a respectful tone, "How did you come to be here?" "Oh, I've been here well, can't rightly recall how long." He scratched his hair, pulled out a caterpillar, and gently set it on the ground before turning back to the group with a smile. "I was the cabin boy aboard a fishing ship that ran aground long ago. I thought I was a goner when a giant white wolf found me, but he took me to the old druid on the island, and I've been here ever since, protecting the animals from the likes of you." Reynard leaned over to Kai and whispered, "This nut is a few trees short of an orchard. I say we—" "Well, that's enough chit-chat," Kichi interrupted. "It's time to embark on our vision quest."
the cloud.
You're listening to Big World Network.